My name is Sheila Finley, and I'm a child protection specialist with Child and Family Services. A little bit about my background. I did go to the university here and got my BSW. Worked in various fields. Came to Child and Family Services up in the Havre area. Lasted up there probably about 5.5 years. And that's kind of the typical range that a normal social worker lasts in this field. As with everybody else, I burnt out. I burnt out on a sexual abuse case that went to criminal trial. The mother did not believe her daughter. And it came back as a hung jury. Before the trial had started, this kiddo had tried to hang herself too in her foster home. So we had to take her to a residential treatment facility. Like I said, it was a hung jury, and the county attorney's office decided not to retry it because it was just so traumatic on this child. She was probably about 11 or 12 at the time. Oh, maybe 14, because a couple years had gone by. Anyway, I put so much time and effort, blah, 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 that I got too emotionally involved. And so after that case, I wasn't being nice to people. And I knew I needed to step back. So I left for 4 years. And I went back in November of 2003. So it'll be 10 years, my second round in November. I think I've come back with a completely different viewpoint of what we do. Knowing that I need to just stay separated and not get involved emotionally and do what I need to do for the safety of a child and for the well-being of a family. So far it's worked. As Dennis says, you know, we've been really, really busy, especially this past year. A typical amount of children that we go legal on is usually between 40 and 60 in a year. Last year we surpassed 100.
123.
Was that the official number? Also, with the turnover.
In the state of Montana or in Missoula County?
Missoula.
Do you know my name?
You know, I think it's a combination of things. I think the economy, parents not being able to take care of their children, parents, prescription drugs, alcohol, meth. Meth is coming back big time lately. Yeah. You know, some is physical abuse, some is sexual abuse. So we get the full gamut for sure. So, and like I was explaining, that the turnover is so great that, you know, we usually have about 18 workers in our office, and right now we have 9 new workers. So the rest of the load that the new workers can't do gets shuffled out to the rest of us who can do it. So don't get too discouraged with us. We're trying to catch up. And then another piece that I do is I show you pictures of things that I've done, like dirty houses with feces smeared on the walls, drug paraphernalia, safety factors at a house, such as like a chainsaw just laying out there with little ones running around. So I apologize to that. What I do is basically, I kind of shoot from my hip. I don't have an agenda. Anytime you guys have a question, please, let's talk about it. I think what I'm going to talk about first is our centralized intake. Oh, actually, I'm going to back that up. I did see you in court today, Brian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so to clarify your second case with the 2 little ones.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so, because that was mine.
All right.
So, 2 kiddos. One's 4. One is now a year and a half. I've been involved with this family since July of 2012. 11, I believe. Mom wouldn't come back to get her kids. I ended up putting her kids in care. She happened to be with the dad of the little guy, 2 different dads. So a grandma from Browning comes down for the older one. She's the paternal grandmother. And then little guy, well, ends up in Watson's. Little guy, he was born end of June of 2011. And he had, I don't know, like 8 placements between then and October.
Placement means place where they go to live?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They went from a relative to Watson's. Little guy went to sister's relatives. They couldn't care for him because he was so fussy. Back to Watson's, to mom. When mom left where she was, went back to her mom's house, which was not an appropriate place. And then mom gets arrested for a 4th DUI. Yeah. So anyway, 2 kiddos. The one from Browning is back and forth. There was question about paternity. We got it established. Mom was incarcerated, and she wasn't making her visits, or sporadically. And the dad, one dad wasn't involved. He was like up in Alaska or something. But the dad to the young one wouldn't come see his kid, despite our efforts. I tried reaching out to his family, and I have documents of that. No response. Mom went to Watch East through DOC, was there from, well, she was sentenced.
What's that?
Department of Corrections.
The first word. What? What'd you say?
Watch
Oh, I see. That was another acronym.
through DOC.
Watch, that's what program?
It's like a treatment program
Oh, okay. Oh.
for people who are incarcerated. Mom's sentencing was in April, so she was arrested after her sentencing and went to the Watch program in May. Got out, gosh, Veterans Day of last year. Somehow got herself into the Carol Graham home.
Carol Graham, everybody know about Carol Graham?
Well, then you need to tell me.
Don't know anything.
All right, so sometimes you guys need to just say, hey, what is that? Carol Graham Home is a place that's for women who have children. It's like an aftercare program. And basically, these mothers learn how to reparent, how to parent in a healthy way and maintain their own life and, you know, venture out, whether it's school, work, whatever. They have groups, they have individual therapies. They all have their own room where both them and their children sleep in.
There's 18 to, no, 16? There's an age, I mean, if you're 45, you can't go in there. Right?
I have no idea about age.
I think there's a age.
Age limit?
Yeah, they're young moms.
A lot of them, 20s and 30s.
32 or something like that. And then it's up to like 30, I think like 30 or 32, and then it's pretty much a transitional housing program.
Right.
So I mean, it's not temporary, so it's not like 60 days, but it is like really more long term, 12 to 18 months until they can find like their own permanent housing in the community and have been able to take care of their substance abuse, like just maintaining sobriety and returning to.
Well, and with this mom, I was told between 9 and 12 months. So I think it varies, and that can always be extended too if they're not ready. So anyway, mom goes to Carol Graham. I bring oldest child home, and little guy is in foster care down in the Bitterroot. Has been since October of 11. She gets in, we returned kiddo. Mom's not liking it there. She's made it very clear she was only there to get her kids back. I would bring little guy up for visits, and the foster mom would bring him to the Carol Graham home. And her oldest one would have huge temper tantrums. And mom would, do the empty threats. If you don't do this, you're not going to be able to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually, after all this, and the kiddo is just wailing, will give in to this child. And she's like, why are you only bad when your brother comes? Well, mom had some infractions, left the home without permission, concealed a cell phone, which she's not supposed to have. And one day she just, she was making contact with another family member through Facebook. And they kicked her out. So
I have a question. If you have these people that need assistance and need help, one of the primary ways that you can do that is actually be able to be in communication. So why would anybody ever be banned a cell phone? I mean, I could understand looking at the bills to make sure that somebody's not calling their drug dealer, but...
It's for the adjustment. And so with this type of aftercare program, it's to have them get to know other women that are in the house, for them to adjust, for them to know the rules. A lot of times, even in like group homes, that if they're allowed communications with who they've associated with in the past, they're always going to have that foot there. And they're not going to commit themselves to the aftercare treatment or to the treatment. So she was asked to leave, oldest kiddo, back with grandma. And so eventually, and the dad had done, of little guy, has done nothing. I can't do that. If I do a CD eval, they're going to say that I'm chemically addicted, and I don't want to...
What's a CD eval?
Chemical dependency evaluation. I have a job, and I don't want to lose it, and I just don't have time. Yeah, no. Trying to get him going, set up times for him to be able to see his son. Oh, I'm not coming. Or, oh, I had a death in the family, had to leave, even though he went to Pearl Jam concert. Pearl Jam, son, yeah, you're here. So, since mom failed, all of a sudden dad's like, I'm going to kick it up. Wanting to see his kid every week. Had a CD eval that said he was in remission. Hey, that's great, but excuse me, chemical dependency treatment facility, based on what information? Is it just based on the client's information? Because that's not going to get us anywhere. So with the older child, and this is kind of where I think you got a little confused, different acronyms. With the older child, because she has a relationship with both parents, and it's culturally appropriate for the Native Americans to raise their grandbabies. So I have asked for LTC, which means long-term custody, and we're hoping to get the grandmother guardianship of this child until such time one or both parents are able to get their stuff together. As far as little guy has been in care. This father, even after paternity was established, still didn't come see his kid, didn't get to know him, family didn't touch it. And so it's a little too late. I've asked for permanent legal custody with the right to consent to adoption. He has grown up knowing this family, and you can't just step up when another parent obviously isn't going to get him back. So
then does that come with termination of both parents' parental rights?
yes.
We're gonna have a section on legal stuff.
Yeah.
Tribal cases, is there a tribal representative as well?
Yes, there has been, and there's been a changeover, so we're not quite sure how that's going to pan out. you know, the tribe, I know that the parents are trying to get the tribe to assume jurisdiction, which means to take the case from the state and bring it back to the tribe. I'm not sure that's going to happen because the tribe usually only takes children who are what we call 4E eligible, which means that they are funded federally with federal money. And this little guy right now is not 4E. He is state funded. And so if a tribe takes on that, then that usually means that the BIA would have to, the tribe would have to pay for that kiddo. Yes.
When you mentioned that he had waited, which he certainly did, is there an amount of time? Is that an arbitrary amount of time? Or is it something like a statute of
There is a
limitations?
statute, a federal statute, that if a child is in care 15 out of 22 months, that we are mandated to terminate parental rights unless there's a good cause. One, being with kin, or two, that the parents have made or making progress, we're really trying to work towards reunification, or three, maybe the child just needs extra treatment that he couldn't get if back with a parent.
Is that the same for every state? 22 months?
Yes.
Is that the
Yeah,
same?
it's a federal law.
What if the parents incarcerated?
Same thing. If it does not look like they were going to get out in a reasonable amount of time, you know, I'm sorry. I had a kiddo, I terminated parental rights on the mom because she was one of 5 siblings who were sexually abused by both parents that were in the home. This one's father was in the Michigan prison system for solicitation of murder on a peace officer. He never really had a relationship with his daughter. He got out, I gave him a shot, we gave him a treatment plan, couldn't do it. He was more interested in trying to find ladies on Facebook. He was completely finished. He was not on parole or probation. He was on parole, but only for a limited amount of time, and he stayed in Michigan. And then he came to Montana, and then he went back, and then he came back to Montana, and then he went to like Arkansas or something. And so he's just been floating around. He's been keeping in great touch with his attorney. Great. What about his daughter? He's not writing her, you know, nothing. So he just ended up relinquishing.
Is that what you're?
No.
What do you mean?
Like a therapeutic level care, like therapeutic group homes. Because the state pays for room and board and Medicaid pays for the therapeutic portion of it.
Oh.
And so more work needs to be done before it's safe for the kiddo to return to the family home. Whether that's relationship stuff, kids' own issues and behaviors or whatnot. So that's what I meant by that.
In the beginning of a case, can the parents cop out immediately and relinquish all parental rights, or are they forced to attempt to take on some sort of responsibility?
No, in fact, I have a case where I have 4 kiddos at Watson's, sibling group of 4. Mom's a meth addict. She took off with her kids at one point, and thank goodness we got them back. But she was pregnant, using meth pretty much the whole time. She had a meth criminal stuff here, and then she was picked up over in Idaho. She was incarcerated and then went to the YWCA for right before baby was born. Baby was born. We would have taken it, but we gave her one last option to get involved with, because she didn't want it, neither does the dad. She ended up working with Catholic Social Services, and the baby, when the baby was ready to be released, went home with the adoptive parents. And the adoptive parents took the baby to Watson's for the kids to meet their brother.
So they can relinquish
And they can.
without any treatment plan or anything? And they go through counseling or something before they're?
Yes, so many hours. They can ask to have that waived, though.
Judges are pretty good about making sure you understand that you are by doing this.
Yeah.
And if it's an ICWA baby, Does anyone know what ICWA is?
For what?
Indian Child Welfare Act, an Indian child.
Say that again.
ICWA.
ICWA, thank you.
Mhm.
We're gonna have a session on it.
We're gonna
Yep.
test that.
And that's that family that I'm terminating a little guy.
Okay.
If it's an ICWA baby and a parent wants to relinquish, it has to be done in front of a district court judge. So, different rules.
So, do Native American children have to be placed with Native American families?
That is the preference. Doesn't always happen. I just placed a 2-month-old baby whose parents dropped her off at someone's house, said they would be back and didn't. And baby got passed around between two different people, and so I placed baby. And baby's, Native American, but I'm not going to place a 2-month-old baby into Watson's. I found a non-Indian home because that's in the best interest of that child. So if we have a case where things are just not looking good for a parent and for reunification to occur, and we're talking about termination, and let's say we even turned in our reports to the court, to our county attorney's office, asking for termination of parental rights. Between that time and when a hearing is, a parent can decide, hey, this isn't working. Baby's going to be better, or child's going to be better somewhere else, whether it's with a family or an adoptive home, whatever. I'm going to sign over my rights so my child can have a better home. So when a parent relinquishes their rights, and let's say down the road has another baby, because they relinquish it, we have to treat that family. We can't just go in and take it because they relinquished. We have to...
Treat them as if it never happened.
Kind of.
Yeah.
You just reassess.
Start over.
Yep, you
How
reassess.
would otherwise do that then?
It might have changed.
So the other option is terminate.
Oh,
Pardon me?
So the other option would be if they terminate it?
Right.
And then that would, what's the difference?
If they terminate it and then a year later they have another baby. So they terminate rights on 2 children and then 2 years down the road they have another baby. You treat that as a brand new situation.
We kind of would, yes. May get more involved just to make sure. It's like I said, it's a case by case, and it depends on what's going on with that parent.
Do you even know?
I was just
It
going
was
to ask that
saying,
same
who
question.
checks
How did you know
Know what?
Okay,
that she
so
had another child?
yeah, that they had another,
Oh.
terminate their rights and 2 years later they have another baby. How do you even know?
Did they terminate?
If we know that they're pregnant, we can flag them at the hospital. Like I have a client that's due next month.
Okay, if you know they're pregnant, so somebody has to.
Yeah. Or they could go into a hospital without us knowing that they're pregnant and have the baby and maybe wasn't bonding with that baby the way they should be. Then that would, or maybe the baby was born with drugs in its system.
And then you can go in and you can take that baby, if they've terminated, then you can remove at that point.
If it's deemed appropriate, yes.
If deemed appropriate, you could, whereas if it was the relinquishment, wouldn't have it, so to speak.
Like I said, it just depends on what's going on all the way around. And another thing too, we talked about relinquishment and right away. There's also times that we can ask for termination of parental rights immediately. Like that sibling group of 5 that I spoke about who had been sexually abused by both parents. I immediately went for termination of their parental rights, and we did get that. And the reason for that, without offering a treatment plan, is because of what we call aggravated circumstances and the nature of why the children were removed. Over 1,300 pages of discovery, which means that we turned over to the defense. So they ended up relinquishing, actually, because we did go for the termination. But that was part of their plea agreement in the criminal. And, these parents were both developmentally disabled. They knew what they were doing. We had full confessions. They ratted on each other. The bad thing is that they were sent to have psych evals done, and they were found to be not competent to waive their Miranda rights. So all those confessions that were done were not admissible in court. When there's sexual abuse, in this case, both parents did it. It wasn't just one or the other, it was both. These, we had reports on these kids, this family, for over 10 years. And we could never have anything solid enough to take it to court. We tried to, county attorney denied it. So this is what was able to get them into court. And so even though they were not competent enough to waive their Miranda rights, they were found to be competent enough to stand trial.
So with this, if you have one parent that's a...
Right, if there's one parent who was the perpetrator, we look at whether or not that other parent's going to be able to protect this child from this perpetrator. Some can, some can't. And that's where we have to make that decision. We'll work with the mom, well, probably with both parents, but, and sometimes, the other parent, after working with us and going to counseling and whatnot and get really truly understanding, then they get that aha moment, and then they're just engaged. So, anyway, but outcome with those 5, most of the allegations were against the dad at the time. Mom got a deferred sentence, or deferred prosecution, and she ended up walking away scot-free. And even though she's had other sexual stuff done in her past of being a perpetrator and not being cited for it because of her developmental status. The dad, who apparently had a felony before for a DUI, this was going to stick with him a little bit more. So he ended up doing a plea agreement of, he pled guilty to assault on a minor, 5 counts, assault on a minor, not sexual assault, just assault. He did a psychosexual evaluation. He's a sex offender. He had to do that. And he's on probation.
So is he registered?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he is. I made sure of that. And then he's on probation for like 25 years. So.
Is part of your job ever, I'm just sitting here thinking, and it seems like there's a common thread, and I'm troubled by somebody having their 5th child, doing meth while they're pregnant and not even wanting that baby. It's part of what you do, and it's not applicable to us. But you counsel people on birth control, or who does? Is that left to their OB, or I mean, I would think that would be somehow.
Yeah, we can't tell a person to be on birth control or not.
No.
Right. So yeah, most of it's the doctors. Let's kind of go back to how does our agency run? I kind of got off on a tangent, and that's what I do. So, centralized intake. It's what we call CI. It is located in Helena. It is manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by social workers. What happens is they take a report, they take all the information, and then based on their guidelines, they will determine what type of report it is. It could be what we call a CPI, which means information only. Doesn't meet the level to do an investigation, but it's put into the system as information in case something else comes in.
Is this CI, is this a phone number that I could call if I saw something happening, or is it for law enforcement only?
Nope, nope.
Professional? Okay.
It's for everyone.
Online, basically.
Yep, and that number is 866. (820) 5437.
Is that CPS or is it different?
No, it's still Child and Family Services. But they take all the reports for the whole state. So they take the report, they determine what kind it is, CPI, information only. Next level up from there is what we call a CFS, which means request for services. Let's say, you know, there was some type of sexual abuse and parents wanted help getting the services for their, for their child that they felt he needed or she needed. And then we would assist that family and give them recommendations. And then the final category is what we call a CPS, which means an investigation. Now, within a CPS report, there's also different levels there.
So that second one, I'm assuming, is where nobody in the family is a perpetrator.
Correct. They're just asking for help.
Okay, thank you.
They're just asking for help. So CPS, different levels. We have one called Priority 1, which means that the response time has to be within 24 hours. Usually with a Priority 1, we're on it immediately, unless it was like towards the end of the day, we really need to see the kid in school. As long as it's within that 24 hours, we're fine. But normally we go out right away.
And this is not only sexual abuse, but physical abuse?
Physical neglects, sexual abuse, psychological, you name it.
When you say you go out, are you escorted by police or are you just by yourself?
Just you.
Pack of heat?
Nope.
You in your bulletproof vest, huh?
Nope, no heat.
Do you have some way of identifying yourself to them, or is that the first thing you do is like, they know when you show up, they know why you're there? I mean, is it?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
So, and I'll get to that. So Priority 1, 24-hour response time. Now there's a Priority 2, and that's a response time within 72 hours. And then there is a Priority 3, which means it has to be responded to within 10 days. If sometimes we'll get something that comes over as a P9. What that means is that the reporter is anonymous. So we have up to 48 hours to find anything to support the allegations. If there's nothing, we close it out.
What do you call that?
Like a P9.
A P9.
Yeah.
But anonymous, and you have,
Like 48 hours or something to determine whether or not there's any facts to support any of this, and if not, we just close it.
Might just be a neighbor trying to screw it.
Yeah, what I tell people when I've done community things is leave your name, because we may have further questions for you that maybe weren't answered in here. So most people do, and people who report, their names are protected by Montana state law. We're not allowed to say, oh yeah, Joe neighbor called, you know, what's going on? Because a lot of times there is retaliation.
Oh, yeah.
Is it so if it goes to court though?
Pardon me?
If it goes to court?
It depends. It depends. Do we need them in court? If so, we'll bring them in court. We'll talk to them first and explain to them why it would be important for them to testify. So we get our report. So what we do as workers, well, what CI does, they send it out to the field, to the supervisors. And from there, it gets doled out to us workers, us line workers. So then what we do, first thing we do is go talk to the child victim. Especially if it's physical abuse, because we can take pictures, whether it's in daycare, school, an after-school program. And then if they have siblings that are in school, we're going to hit those siblings up.
And you don't have to ask for permission from mom and dad to do that, right?
No. No. So we do that. We talk to the school, hey, have you noticed any changes in Johnny? Or if there's like a daycare provider, what do you know? How do you see the parents engaging with their kids? Like I had a physical abuse case where there was concern that parents weren't supervising their children, and one of the brothers beat up the other one. Had bruises all over his face. But from talking with the provider, these parents really are really great parents. Not sure what happened here for him to get so bruised, but for the most part, they're responsive, they're great people, you know, great parents, and the kids respond well to them. So, so then we go to the parents. And we go unannounced. Most of the time they'll let us in. There are times where they're like, I'm not letting you in. And you have to explain, you know, we have a report, we're mandated to investigate it. Cannot close it until it is. You know, all I'd like to do is just a few minutes of your time, even just trying to get in the door and just scoping out the nature of the report and then going back later. If not, then we would have to submit a report to the court or to the county attorney's office requesting temporary investigative authority. Does not give us custody of the kids, but it gives us the authority to investigate the report. So parents can kind of do this cooperatively, or they can join the circus.
When do you bring the police?
If there's information within the report that suggests that my safety may be at risk, especially if there's like drug cases and stuff like that, you know, I work with HIDA a lot. High Intensity Drug Task Agency.
Yeah,
So
they try
you
to
get this
be-
temporary investigative authority and you go back to the parents and they say, and they still say, no, we're not letting you, I mean,
They're not following a court order.
So then you
okay.
go with-
Well, and they have an
don't take
attorney.
care.
No, they have an attorney. So that's,
Oh, because now they've had an attorney appointed, okay.
yes.
So if you get temporary investigative authority, they have an attorney appointed automatically?
Whenever we go to court, parents
Okay.
have attorneys. Yep, absolutely. So talking about TIA, now if we go in and let's say, you know, there's something going on. This family's needing help and they're going, yes, we need help. Will you please help us? You know, because we don't know what to do. Then what we can do, we can work with the family on a voluntary.
Does that happen?
Huh?
Does that happen often when they say it? Or we
Mm-hmm.
need help, really?
It's some do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a mom right now who's working with me, and she's one, I think she's just going to need her hand held for a little bit because she has no clue. I think she can do it with a little help. So we'll work with the family voluntarily. We do an in-home safety plan with them. We do what we call a VPSA, which means a voluntary service protective service agreement. They usually last between 3 and 6 months. So we work with them in trying to get services in, and we want to look at services to get in the home that if they're on Medicaid, Medicaid's going to be able to still continue to pay for these services when I get out. Trying to just wrap the family without us paying too much. Because if I jump out and that funding's gone, they could fall apart again. Now if I go into a home and I'm like, oh boy, you know, can't keep this kiddo safe. Doesn't matter what I'm thinking and how I approach it. I'm not going to be able to keep this kiddo safe. Then we have to remove the kiddo. It's the last resort that we do. So when we place a kiddo, most of the time we take them to Watson's because we really don't have any open foster homes. And we do that until we can hopefully find extended family that may be appropriate. But in the meantime, I have 48 hours. If it's determined and they're still at school, I'll take them from school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, especially if they're young and they don't go to daycare or anything, if I run into a problem or I know I'm going to remove and there may be a problem, I'll take law enforcement with me. Yeah, just to make it clear cut. And that way, if the parent gets out of control, they're able to take care of that, you know. whoa, lady, whoa, mister.
So, and a lot of times, not want to know how often where police respond to a call and then they have to take parents to jail or they see an unsafe situation, they call you, right?
Yes. And that would be another reason for a child to go into care is if the parents went to jail. And that's kind of where we do this new thing where before we used to just look at the incident at hand. Anymore, we're finding when we do that, we end up getting more reports on the family. So we're starting to, what we do a family functioning assessment, we're looking at all aspects of this family. We're looking at, okay, what were the concerns? What are our findings and why? The nature of the maltreatment. What is each person saying happened? Does it all match? Does it make sense? Then we go into child functioning. You know, is this child healthy? What grade? Do they have a favorite subject, least favorite? Things like that, just to get an idea how this kid's doing. And then you go into parenting. We go into disciplining. What is your disciplining methods? When so-and-so gets in trouble with you, what do you do? Or you say, hey, kiddo, if you get in trouble with mom or dad, what happens? And then we go into parenting, what we call general. And basically, mom, dad, how do you feel about being a parent? How do you feel about the other parent? You know, do you guys, is one more lax, one more strict? Are you equally as strict? Work as team, you know, trying to figure that out. And then the last part is the adult functioning. Are they using drugs or alcohol? Do they work? If they're not from here, where did they come from? Siblings, and kind of get some of their own background. And we do some of the background too in regards to the disciplining. Okay, so we were talking about voluntary. So when we decide that we cannot keep a child safe in the home, that's when we do the removal. And we have 48 hours to get a report to the court, to the county attorney's office, stating why. They review it. They have 3 additional days to file their petition to the district court. And from there, within 20 days, the judge will read it, and if they believe that, yes, this needs to come before them, they will hold what we call a show cause hearing. I think it's OTSC, order to show cause. And that's where everyone starts getting assigned attorneys, even the kids, and that's when I say circus starts. Mm-hmm. From there, if we're asking for temporary legal custody, that's when you guys are appointed. You guys aren't appointed during a temporary investigative authority, but when the state is asking for custody of a child, that's when you're going to be appointed.
Can parents see their kids during the 20 days?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Supervised release.
Unless they're incarcerated.
If parents can see their kids during the 20-day period while the court is judges.
Is that a TOP?
No. No, that's something else.
Oh yeah, what is that 20 days stipulation?
Oh. That's just the guidelines that are set for the court. Hey, you have to have a hearing for parents and the state to show why these kids are out of the home and why they should remain out of the home. Because we are also given emergency protective services, which gives us the right to place a child into a home or outside of the home. So whenever we file court, we ask for the emergency protective services, EPS. And if we're asking for adjudication, that means we're asking for the courts to find that the children that we removed or child that we removed is a youth in need of care. And then we ask for temporary legal custody, TLC, for up to 6 months. A lot of times, you know, parents will stipulate, yep, I agree. Yep, we're not gonna fight Child and Family Services, we agree. Sometimes we do get occasional families that don't agree and they want a hearing. Okay, bring it. Me personally, I do not take a case to court unless I am confident in the reasoning that I'm doing it and knowing that I have the facts to support what I'm doing. If I don't feel I have that, I won't take a case to court. So let's say, okay, whether by stipulation or judge says, state, you have temporary legal custody, we will have an additional 10 days to draft or write up a treatment plan for parents. In treatment plans, you know, they are individualized. You know, what does this parent need? Our ultimate goal is reunification. So we put that as a goal, to reunify Joe parent with such and such kid. And we're also looking to strengthen the parent-child relationship. And we're trying to instill long-term changes so that we are never involved with that family again. Not saying it doesn't happen, but if we do it right.
So while you're doing, within that 10-day period, the CASA's doing their job, right? So
Yep.
they're interviewing the kids. So when do you get the CASA involved in what your idea of what the treatment plan should look like is?
So what happens is, as soon as you get appointed, you want to go to the kids, and it may even be before the show cause hearing, may not. You know, sometimes with, you know, developing a treatment plan, sometimes we could do it as a group, and sometimes, you know, the parent and I, we talk. It's really important to have those parents be a part of the development of that treatment plan, because then they own that plan. It's not some CPS worker going, you need to do this, this, and this. Yep, because I said you need this. By talking to them, you may find out other things that they need that you had no clue about. I've had a repeat family, worked with them voluntarily back in 2009, and then came back into our system. And it had to do the same thing. Dad had been drinking whenever a child got hurt. It's like, what the heck? So it's like, hey, Dad, you really need to work, we need to address this. I said, every time you've been drinking. And he was able to realize that. And so he had a run-in with law enforcement as well. That was probably not appropriate. He does not like law enforcement. We'll come to find out through talking to him, he had been sexually abused by a law enforcement official in Washington when he was a kid, and his mom never believed it. So it wasn't that he had anger issues like he had in the past and things like that. He's got all these trauma-based things. Light bulb, we need to work on the trauma. So he's not angry. This man wasn't sleeping at night. He was having nightmares. His patience was next to nil. And it's amazing how far they've come. He had a slip where he harmed one of his kids again. But after that, after that second incident and second round of charges, he got on medication, which made a whole heck of a lot of difference. You know, he was doing trauma work, but after he started taking the medications, as his therapist said, he has a different relationship now with his trauma. He's able to sleep at night without having nightmares. He's feeling rested. He's feeling more, patient. Went through circle of security classes, which are like a parenting class for people to learn where their child's needs are at the time, embraced it, able to demonstrate it, and this family is just amazing. They're engaged. They want this change. And so as one of the children aged out of our system, within a few months of us getting involved, one aged out and then mom had a baby. So they are just committed. I have in-home services with them. We have individual counselors for each of the kids, except for the baby, of course. Mom has a therapist, dad has an individual therapist. They're doing couples counseling. And so for a while, mom was doing it all because dad was not allowed to have any contact.
So how does the CASA know that they're following the treatment plan? Are you informing the CASA of this along the way?
No.
Nope, we're not. What I do, I focus on ensuring that the family and the kids are getting what they need.
Okay, so how?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So what we emphasize and what you're going to hear from attorneys is that we do our own independent research. And that's what CFS really encourages too. So although we talk, we interview the caseworker, we look at all the files, we need to talk to the therapists, we need to talk to the school people, we do to the service providers, we talk to, and you get the information from them. Are these people engaged? Are they doing it? Are they making their visitations? How are the visitations? You will go to the visitations and observe the parents with the children. So you will get your own, you do your own assessment of that.
Also, if we, with certain families, I'm a huge person of treatment team meetings. Everyone involved, let's get together, let's make sure that we're all on the same page for this family. Because if we're not on the same page, one person may be doing this, another person's going to be doing this, and we're not going to be working towards the same thing. And if we're having issues with a parent not following through with things, hey, we got to meet. We need to talk about this. What do we need to do differently to help support you more? Is this something that you want to do? So going to treatment team meetings, huge wealth of information.
So a CASA isn't a member of the treatment team,
Yeah.
but
You are.
That's part of the definition of the job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You mentioned in-home services. What does that involve?
It involves like a therapist, like a treatment case manager. You have a family support specialist that go in the home. Usually there's a targeted child. In this case I was just talking about, there was 2 targeted children, and so there's 2 family support specialists in there. And they are pretty much on call 24/7 in case there's a crisis. And we utilize them for safety plans and whatnot. They work with the family on parenting. They'll role model for them if they need to. And, and with this particular family, and every family has different needs, because mom's afraid, her pride doesn't allow her to reach out and just touch base with people, because that's just not how she was. She too was a sexual abuse victim when she was little. In whole incestuous thing where you need a complete butcher paper to understand this family. She could reach out, so the family support specialist and started calling her every day just to start that going, and then she was able to start doing it back, which is huge. And that's part of the reason why the second incident happened, because she didn't reach out when she knew she should have. Okay, so, as far as treatment plans, totally tailorized. If it has to do with chemical dependency issues, we're going to be looking at having UAs done, urinalysis. For drugs and alcohol, if there's alcohol involved, we're going to ask them to get a chemical dependency evaluation, and we're going to say, you need to do it by such and such date. And knowing that Turning Point only takes, they only do chemical dependency evaluations on Tuesday mornings, we tell our clients, you got to be there about 7:30 if you want to get in, because they only take so many in the morning in that day. And all the recommendations, you know, do they need inpatient treatment? Do they need outpatient treatment? You know, what do they need? In this one where I'm going for termination, mom needed inpatient treatment. She went, but she was forced to go through her criminal stuff. And then from there, it was recommended her to go into a sober living situation, because the home she came from and would go back to is not a healthy home. Never has been. But when there is suspected sexual abuse, we get our kids right into what we call First Step. Does everyone know?
The forensic interview.
Child Advocacy Center.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They do the sexual assault examination for children and pretty much everybody
And they're trained forensic interviewers,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
correct.
So-
Yep. So they'll do the interview where it's taped and recorded,
Right.
and then they do just kind of like a little check to make sure that there's no damage or parent damage. A lot of times you are not going to find any damage because it heals so quickly. But those interviews, some ways that kids explain how things happen to them, you're just like, whoa, they wouldn't have known to do that. So First Step
Or they're
interviews
acting out
are,
with other kids.
Yeah,
they're acting out oftentimes sexually. Yeah.
yeah,
very sexualized.
yeah, and I have
It's not like you don't ever have a treatment plan for a sex offender, right? I mean,
no, I mean, I have not run into that personally, because I've just gone for termination.
Okay. What about physical abuse? Do you ever have situations where you reunify with a physical abuser?
Mm-hmm. Oh, all the time, yeah. Yeah. You know, when we get these cases, you know, it's not that these parents are bad. They're just caught in a situation and they need help getting out of that situation. And, you know, sometimes people don't have the resources to do it or even know how to do it because they were brought up that way. So that's part of our goal, is to, what are the strengths of these parents? What do these parents need? And what kind of services do they need so that they're able to parent their child in a healthy way? And once they can demonstrate that, of course, we're going to reunify them with their parent or with their child. And sometimes too, you know, okay, so let's say you have a psych eval that comes back and it's not looking the greatest, or it has a recommendation that the parent doesn't want to do, and of course their attorney's going to fight for that. Let's come together. Client, your attorney, myself, let's come together and talk about this. You know, and is there a way to resolve it? If not, they can take it to the judge.
Who finally, the judge decides? Fine.
Judge has ultimate decision. Mm-hmm. Yep, because if something, way I see it is, if I fight for something that I believe is in the best interest of a child, and it's being contested, I'm going to take it to the judge and let him make that decision, because if something happens to that child, I've done everything that I can. And also with treatment plans too, you have to know kind of where your client is cognitively, and you know, are they able to read? You know, what reading grade do they have? Can they read? So I always make my treatment plans really simple. This is my expectations from you, and this is when I expect you to have it done by. And that seems to work the best. If you make it too complex, you're setting up a family to fail. You know, and that's not what we want. And we don't want them to feel overwhelmed. You know, and sometimes if there's a lot of things that a parent needs to do, break them down. Phase 1, with you know, with things that says, you know, we're gonna, after this is completed, we'll move on to the phase 2, which is another set. And a lot of times attorneys will say, oh, you just keep adding and adding and adding and adding, and it's like, no, it's just trying to keep your client from being overwhelmed so they succeed. And sometimes the clients do need hand-holding. Sometimes they don't want to do it, and they won't. As I tell my clients is, you're in the driver's seat. You can embrace the services and get your children back and never see me again, hopefully, or you can buck it and take the hard, basically taking the hard road. I'm pretty upfront with my clients. I'm a straight shooter. When I file a case or do a report to the court, I put everything that I have out there on the table. I just don't give little bits, hoping to be able to explain it in court later. This is what I have. One of that termination report that I did on that sibling group of 5 that was sexually abused by both parents, my termination report was 78 pages long. And the one I just did with the one we went to court today, I guess the dad's attorney's like 43 pages. Okay. So I think more it's out there, the less they have a leg to stand on and fight.
When they do fight something, do they usually, well, I mean, you're an expert in your field and all these areas, would they bring in an expert that says, well, a psychologist or someone who'd say, well, we don't think this treatment plan is appropriate and this is why? Or is it just their opinion versus yours? Mm-hmm. Usually.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, I want to work with these people to develop the plan.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to sit there and tell someone what to do when maybe both of us have some ideas that might be beneficial to them. Because, like I said, they own it. It's just not someone telling them what to do, because a lot of people are just going to buck it, like a teenager bucks a parent, says, don't do that. Yeah, okay. You know, they own it.
But when they do contest it, which I think you said happens,
Mm-hmm.
how, they don't have a, I mean, who's
No.
going to listen to, you or them? I mean, it seems like the judge is always going to come down on your side. You're reasonable.
Well, you know, the defense attorneys will try to make an argument as to why it shouldn't happen that would be beneficial for their client. And, you know, us as a state, we're like, this is what we're asking for, and this is why we're asking for it. You know, this is why they don't want it. And the judge will make that decision. Sometimes they'll go with the defense attorney, and sometimes they'll go with us. It depends on what it is. So it's a matter of picking and choosing your battles, too.
And a lot of it seems, too, in a termination here, where they're after reasonable efforts. Because the state has to make reasonable
efforts for all kids except for Native American kids, in which it becomes active efforts.
So, and that's where it gets, where they can contest that and say, really, the state didn't make, you know, given all this, they really didn't make reasonable efforts.
Reasonable effort to what?
To reunify.
Oh, okay, to reunify.
So they can putting all the services in place and
doing what we can to reunify a family.
So what if parents are still making reasonable efforts? You know, like mom with 4 kids, like what if there's still like visitations going on, like, I mean, that's reasonable efforts from the other side. So does that still fall back on the 15 out of 22 months? That's the policy.
Time is ticking. Time is ticking. As far as this mom, after she had her baby and gave it up for adoption, she ended up going back to Spokane and is doing meth again. So there's a warrant out for arrest here. And I guess the nice thing about her being pregnant when she was doing meth and she got picked up by the police is that they charged her for doing drugs while she's pregnant. Yeah. Whereas Montana, we can't do that. We cannot say that an unborn baby is a person until it's born.
your experience with CASAs?
Experience with CASAs. For the most part, great. You know, I guess I would say that if a worker's saying that they're doing something and you're kind of going, I'm not getting it, say, help me understand where you're coming from. You know, what I usually do is like, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. The sibling group of 5 that I had, that CASA was amazing. And she ended up getting CASA of the Year award, but just amazing. She was involved at every meeting. It was just like, wow. Really advocated for the kids. You know, if you guys have a question, email us. That's the best way. Phone calls, sometimes it's days before we get back, and sometimes it slips our mind. We're not perfect either. I've had some, I wouldn't say negative experiences, I would say kind of quirky experiences. So when you're assigned a kiddo, please don't try to get a hug from them when you're leaving after visiting them. Especially with the little ones, they don't even know who the heck you are. Trying to think what else did that one do.
You just mentioned one tonight.
Well,
The picture taken.
right. Earlier I did a visit, and that's why my brain's so scattered, because 7.5 hours of my day was on this one case. Because I went down the Bitterroot, got a kid, brought him back for this visit. During the visit, the CASA came. I didn't think she was going to save the whole thing, but she did. But okay, no big deal. No sweat off my back. But here, you know, the dad taking all these pictures of this kiddo, and this kiddo is just obsessed with a vacuum. He's like, vacuum, vacuum, and he'll do the vacuum, and it's just really cute. Well, she starts taking pictures of him and trying to put the vacuum out there, hoping that he'd go on it so she could take a picture of that without asking, and doing it on her own personal phone. So it's like, what is your purpose for that? So that was a question. I've never run into something like that before.
Just for a point of clarification along this line, because we have said it's great to take pictures, but you got to get permission. You know, get from the parents, from the foster parents, from the children if they're verbal. Is it okay if, and usually it's just fine. But we like that in your report you include a picture of the child. And then, so the judge gets a picture, and the value of that is that down the road, say it takes 2 years, in some cases 3 years, and we have a case that's 4 years. And if the judge can see that picture of a 2-year-old, and then sees a picture of a 6-year-old and goes, whoa,
yeah,
you know, we're not, this case should have been.
This kid's shaving now.
So it really, yeah.
And I guess that's my point, is that I don't take pictures of my kids unless I'm taking them for court purposes. You know, if they have pictures taken by the foster parents who want to share them with me, absolutely, up on my wall with the others. When you talk to families, try not to call them on a weekend night when they're trying to get the kids to bed.
You know, I'm just thinking, I mean, I would worry that taking a picture, you know, inside a family's home, on your own personal phone, when that phone isn't really secure, I would think that might be a confidentiality.
And that was my big concern, and that's why I spoke to Dennis tonight, because I've never run into that before. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And so that's why I asked him, I said, what are your boundaries for CASAs? Because this is what I experienced today, and it really made me feel uncomfortable. You know, I don't take pictures of my kids. I don't even try to hug my kids unless they come to me. You know, so just little things like that. You know, as far as your role, you're there not to side with us, not to side with the defense attorneys or the parents or even the child's attorney. You're there to be objective. And like Dennis says, you're going to be doing your own investigation. And from there, you need to stick to it. don't get sucked in to either side, because they'll try to do that. Just be you. Don't.
Can you give me an example of when you and a CASA might disagree on something? Nothing major necessarily, but just a point of example.
I think, like with the CASA that was at the visit today. Visit went okay, but I've tailored back from those visits after today to every other week, because when the foster mom can't do them and I'm transporting, this kid comes unglued after the visit.
Oh.
But during the visit, yeah, he's going to play with somebody. Yeah, you're going to play with me? You're going to let me crawl up there and jump onto you? Right on, What 18-month, 20-month-old kid's not going to let you do that? And he'll say goodbye. Yep. Can I have a kiss? Yeah, he'll give him a kiss, or he'll say no or whatever. And I took him back to the foster home, and he started hitting her in the face and started kicking her, and he was mad. And then after, she's like, whoa, do you need a timeout? And he's like, no. She's like, you need to not do that. He just kind of went blah. He held on to her and would not let go of her. And even if she, after a while, tried to put him down, because she and I were talking, and he was having nothing of it. And that's a good time for you to do some observation. And that's a time where there could be that contention between CASA and I, because I'm observing this, you're only observing part of this visit. So I think that if there's concern about how children are reacting after a visit, where's that child going after that visit? And, go with that worker, if you want, and watch it.
So the contention might be...
You're saying everything's hunky-dory.
Information, you're thinking that they need more time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
This was the little one who's been in 8 placements in the first year and a half of his life?
Well, no, in the first 4 months of his life? No, he's been with the same family. He identifies his family as his mom and dad. And it's confusing when the dad, who's had nothing to do with him at all until the last, 6 weeks, saying, yeah, I'm your daddy, I'm your daddy. That confuses him. And he has, it affects him in the home that he's in. He can't sleep at night, he'll wake up, it's pretty traumatizing. Knowing how to communicate with each other, if you're saying, hey, I'm thinking this, like I said with the visits, that visit was great, you should be growing on more, and I'm going, hey, no, I disagree with that. Well, why do I disagree with that? Or if I'm going to do something and you're like, no, I don't agree with that, this is why I don't agree with that. And maybe there's more to the story or more pieces to the puzzle that you're not seeing.
Do we need releases to talk to you?
Nope.
No, okay.
You have more authority to talk to people with being a CASA than I do as a worker.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That little guy that I was just talking about, his mom is on probation. She's been in jail for a probation violation once. And just recently she was in for a second time. And I had asked her at the previous visit, well, when I found out she was in jail, I emailed probation officer, hey, what's going on? Heard nothing back. At the visit, she ended up going with the dad, too. I asked her, I prefer not to talk about it right now. CASA was able to get that information that she was in for marijuana.
I heard you say before, I think, you were encouraging them to see the children, right away.
I wouldn't talk.
See, that's one thing, and then other people have other ideas, but a lot of our CASAs go to you first.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fine.
To read the file.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we have a buttload of stuff, and sometimes we don't have anything. When you do see the kids, talk to their care providers. They're a wealth of information.
So they might go to your office first. I mean, not many of them do. They'll go to the Child and Family Services office. They have, many times the file is pretty thick, and then they can stay there, go through the file. They can get copies of
whatever you want.
Whatever you want from that to take with you. So that you get a lot of information. But then again, you got to follow up on it and make sure it's accurate and all that.
And like I said, if you end up getting one of my cases, everything's out there. Everything that's in that file and the history, whatever, here you go.
Can we take those copies if we keep them confidential, like at home with our family member? Can we take them home with us?
Yep, that's part of your file. You're going to keep your own file.
Okay.
And organize it and whatnot. And then the other thing that we encourage you to do is to go back periodically to the Child and Family Service office and re-look at it. Because things get added to it.
Usually becomes a drop file, so nothing's filed. So just fair warning.
Okay, so if they go back there, say 3 months, 6 months later, 3 months later, what would they ask for? Just the file, or what should they ask for?
Well, they would know if there's anything new going on since they last looked at the file, whether a parent had a psych eval or a chemical dependency eval, or a kiddo was seen by Child Development Center, CDC. So then they could ask for those. What I've started doing, I don't have time to put notes into my computer like we're supposed to. So I've downloaded calendars that I can see, and I put down what kind of happens, and then periodically I send them out. And I just started doing that, and it seems to be a wealth of information. Because then everyone can see what the parents are doing, not doing, what happened at the court hearing last, or what happened during a telephone call or a visit with a mom or a dad, and if you talk to a relative, what was said there. And so everything's documented.
That's great. And that's not the usual.
No,
that's,
it's just something I've done on my own, and I think
it's necessary to really go to every once in a while, drop in and check and see.
And I think a couple other workers have started trying to use that.
That's great.
I'm happy to say I don't know where your office is. Can you inform me?
We're in the Palmer Plaza,
Okay.
2677 Palmer. We're upstairs from the Office of Public Assistance, so the Medicaid office. We're the building to the left of the crime lab.
Okay.
And we're on the second floor, sharp left. For some reason, it's Suite 300. We don't have a third floor, but that's what it is. So that's where we are. Also, there's foster care review that you would be invited to. Foster care review is something that's done on all the kids that we have legal action on, and it's done every 6 months. And it's only for a short time, just kind of discussing, and then foster care review, the committee members are members out from the community who make recommendations to the judge.
Very good. Yeah, they really appreciate CASAs too. Family group decision making.
Family group decision making meetings. We try to do them within the first 90 days. Basically, it's to get family members together. Where can different family members be a support to this family? Like with my sibling group of 4 that's in Watson's, they've been in there since the end of July. Or no, the end of September. So now that mom was out of jail, I wanted another one because I need to know who these kids can go to. They can't be in Watson's forever. When kids are in Watson's, they don't have that chance to develop those relationships because you have staff coming in and out. Where in a foster home, they're forced to have that relationship. So, especially with kids with attachment issues, I think that's really important.
Okay.
The circumstances around that, the dad was going to try to get his own place because he was homeless. And that hasn't happened yet. When mom got out of jail, she had put in an application for Carol Graham home. So we're kind of waiting on that.
I see, so there's.
There's certain circumstances that happen, and there is more of mom's family that is going to be engaged in this meeting. And so I need to figure out where these kids are going to go. And a lot of these people are out of state. There's only one family member that's in state. And they're a few hours north of us.
For this family, but in general, when there's siblings involved, 2, 3, 4, how often do they get to stay together?
Yeah.
We always try to keep the siblings together. The sibling group of 5 that were sexually abused by both parents, the therapist working with those children said due to the dynamics within this family, they were not recommending that these kids be placed together. So, and these kids were in Watson's for almost a year. The last one was in there for almost a year. The first one, she went to a therapeutic group home through partnership. Her sibling, the third oldest, she went to another therapeutic group home for treatment because they were sexually abused the most and had the most problems. Little guy, who was 3 at the time that I removed him, was placed in a concurrent home. Whenever we remove kids and we have to place them into care, we need to try to look at, okay, so if they can't go home, what's the other option? You know, do we need a family that could potentially adopt them if need be? Or is it just a family who's going to care for them, keeping the kids near the parents and trying to facilitate that reunification? Or are we going to, at some point, send them off to live with relatives that are farther away? Does that make sense?
What's concurrent home mean?
Concurrent home means that, hey, if our plan A, reunification, doesn't work, we're looking at plan B.
Wouldn't that be foster or adoptive, just automatically?
That's what we were just talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know.
Simply put, it's either foster or adoptive. Concurrent is either foster or
Yeah.
adoptive.
Well, but if a child is in a foster home, knowing that, hey, Aunt Betsy over here in Spokane is going to be a permanency option for this child.
Yeah.
When it gets to the point where we decide this isn't going to work, that's when we look at the relatives. So we could have them in foster care to keep them closer to the parents and working on those relationships and issues that got the family to where they are now. But permanency, when it comes to permanency, there is this extended family out here. We just haven't done that because they're so far away.
Do you have to work with CFS, Child and Family Services, in that out of state then? Do you start working together? Or do you start
Oh boy. Okay, so if we have a child and we want to send them out of state to a relative, we have to do what we call an interstate compact. We have to do all this paperwork and we send it to Helena, who in turn sends it to the capital of the receiving state, because we're considered the sending state. And from there, their capital or their main office will send it to whatever office is in that area where that relative is. And technically, they're supposed to have, I believe, up to 30 days to do a home assessment and then let us know, is this an appropriate home for this child to go to or not? Washington is probably the worst, and it takes several months to even get that. And then we ask for them to do courtesy supervision, where they're involved with checking on the child and making sure that the child is okay, and making sure that the relatives are getting what, able to get what they need for this child.
Can they deny that due to lack of resources to do that? Can they say no, the kid can't go there because they're not going to do those courtesy checks?
A state can deny it. A lot of times the state will deny it if the placement is not appropriate. There's like background concerns, things like that. We kind of touched a little bit on the Indian Child Welfare Act.
We're gonna have a whole session on that.
Yeah, I know. I know that you guys are gonna have your own session, but from our standpoint, ICWA just means that we have to have a higher level of proof to do, like even remove a Native American child versus a white, Chinese, whatever, any other child. So I tried, and it's different standards. Native American children is federal, whereas every other child is state. And I try to hold every other child up to that federal level, just so I'm fair to all across.
So when you terminate, depending on the age of the child, who tells the kid, and how do you have the?
Usually in a therapy session.
Okay.
Yep, it's us, and it's usually done in a therapy session, so the therapist is able to work with that child regarding.
Age appropriate, probably. But.
Yep.
I mean, it's not usually a shock because it's been a long process, and usually they're in therapy along the way also, so they're really working on a lot of different issues at the same time.
Depending on the situation, say goodbye. I mean, like, or is usually rights terminated when parents are completely out of. I mean, is there a transition phase for mom and dad, or is it usually like that clear cut?
I think it depends on the circumstances. As far as that sibling group of 5, in that sexual abuse situation, they never saw him again since the day that I took him out. As far as I had a mom relinquish her rights to a child, and she had the child returned to her and was in her care, but she realized that she wasn't able to do it. So she calls me and says, I can't do this. Will you call the former foster parents and set up a meeting, see if, because I want to know if they will raise her. And so we did that, and it's somewhat of an open adoption, but there was that closure there.
It's tough stuff.
I have a question. For kids that are dropped off at like fire departments, how does that interact? Say if the parent comes back and wants to be involved somehow. Is there more stringent rules on termination then, or not?
Well, so when a baby's left at like a police station, a hospital, or wherever, if that baby then falls under the Safe Haven Act, and so there's no questions to the parents. So once they leave that baby, the baby ends up in our care. And, you know, I don't think I've ever had a parent come back. But if they did, I think we would say, what's going on? What do you need to feel comfortable? And
you would go through almost a normal process.
yes, it would, absolutely.
But normally if that's, I mean, that's an abandonment, obviously, and say the parent, no, you don't even know who it is.
Right, well, that's part of the Safe Haven Act.
Okay.
If a parent, instead of finding a baby in a dumpster, there's this act that they can fall into where they can do this and no questions asked, so that we're not potentially finding that baby in a trash can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want them left. So
Correct.
they can leave them.
Correct.
Nothing's going to happen to them. They're not charged with abandonment, and then they're not criminally liable for.
Do you follow federal laws?
Pardon me?
Child
Do you
abuse.
follow
They
federal
just
laws as almost like Native American coverage with that, with the safe haven thing? Or does it reduce back to a state level if parents know? Is there a play there?
Well, I mean, if it's a Native American child, anytime there's a Native American child, we try to follow, you know, and we're not sure if the child would be enrollable or not.
You gotta what tribe they're from too, don't you? I mean, isn't that?
We would, but that's what I'm saying. We would treat it as such, but after 6 months, if no one's come there, then we can terminate parental rights of unknown Jane Doe and John Doe, and get this baby to permanency. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. He's looking perplexed.
I just have that confused look on
Yeah,
my
he does all that. I noticed that already.
It's no
Pretty well
accident.
There's some weird things going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand the reasoning for the Indian Child Welfare Act. I don't like what it basically is saying is that it's okay for Native American children to be abused more than any other children before they can be removed. I don't agree with that part.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
I mean, it seems to me that the tribe should step up and, you know, if they want to have a separate standard, they should have more accountability for how the care is provided. That's.
Well, and here's the other thing, you know, with us, every time we are involved with the family, we have to look, are these parents meeting minimal level of care? Are they meeting their basic needs? I cannot put what my idea is as acceptable living on somebody else because this is what the law says. And so as much as I may not like leaving a kid in a situation, that parent's meeting that minimal level of care and they have a right to raise their child.
In your opinion, since you brought it up, that struck me, and when that first chapter we read, that definition, is that a real, a decent definition? Minimum sufficient level of care, whatever that thing is?
That's what the law
No, I
says.
didn't know what I asked. What do you think? Do you think that really is, I mean, is it legitimately going to provide a decent future for a child?
It doesn't matter. Are their basic needs being met? Do they have shelter? Do they have clothing?
Okay, let me phrase the question.
Well, you got other people's rights too. The parents have a right.
Exactly. They have a right to raise their children, and not all parents have a lot of money to get them everything that they need.
No, I'm not saying that. And, yeah, what I'm saying is when you see people that are just barely meeting that, do the kids turn out all right?
I guess it depends. You know, if that family has the values within it, of course.
So sometimes yes.
You know, it might not be money-based.
Oh, I know that. It's often never.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, you can have nothing in as long
Oh,
as
and I've known people like
the
that.
moral values are there.
Define all right. You know, we can go around here and define like how do you to turn out all right. You know, what is that going to look like?
It's a subjective thing.
Right?
That's why I asked you about what the things are you look at.
Right.
Because to me, you can, you know, a kid is either getting enough food or they're not. Okay, I mean, they're either getting enough food or they're not. You can make that an objective measurement.
Right.
Okay?
But some kids, especially during
emotional.
school, is that, you know, hey, you know, they eat breakfast and lunch at school.
But they're getting food.
They are.
Their
They are.
parents sign those pieces of papers to make sure that their kid is getting food, or they're taking him to wherever and they're getting a backpack of food.
The emotional part is, are they ignoring that child? Are they negative towards that child? Do they see him as the devil? You know, there's certain things that we look at, and I really apologize for not bringing those books because that would answer some of your questions of what to look for.
I think it's also really important to remember, I mean, so many of the parents that you work with are themselves trauma survivors, you know, and I mean, you know, child abuse, families that have child abuse, I mean, like most of the parents have themselves experienced some level of trauma. And so, I mean, obviously that can't be used as a justification, but you know, a mom who has to keep herself safe every single day because she has an abusive partner in her home is not going to be able to respond to her child's needs as much as everybody is.
Right, but I think that's what our what's the word I'm looking for? Our dilemma. Well, it's not even a dilemma. I think that's the thing we can't get too sucked into.
Right.
Because we can be incredibly empathetic to the abused mom, or you know, the dad who lost his job and the woman is, you know, the mom isn't around, but our goal is still the best interest of the child, right? You know,
You know, we could be involved too with a family, get a report on a family. There could be 12 people living in like a 2-bedroom apartment. but that's still meeting a minimum level of care.
Yeah,
It's 16.
they have a house, they have a room, they have a bathroom. Right? There's some basic, I mean, some of those things for me are really objective, like the food, and do they have a house, and, you know, are they getting cleaned? Right?
Their teeth rotting out of their mouth.
You know, they might have used clothing on, and the clothing might not be brand new, and it might not be the $100 pair of Skechers or whatever, but do they have clothes? The emotional part of it for me is harder.
Yeah.
And this is how it's very, very complex. And that's gonna be the hardest question that you need to answer as you work your cases and say, are the parents good enough?
Right.
Is that minimum level there?
And
it's not, do they have Skechers or not?
Absolutely.
Because if you're gonna say one way or another, you know, they're good enough or they're not good enough, you should be able to say, here's what
Exactly.
I used to come to that conclusion. Yeah, the clothes
Absolutely.
weren't the newest, but they were, you know, they were fine, and yes, the kids, you know, there wasn't like fruit and vegetables on the counter, but you know, the kids didn't look too skinny, and, you know, looked like they were.
Basically,
It's
when
all
you guys
based
get
on
in,
facts, and what your facts are.
and when you guys get involved, we're already gonna have that outlined for you guys. It's not like you're gonna go back and say, well, I disagree with this and blah, blah, blah. We've done our investigation. This is what we found in our investigation, and this is what we did. So the facts to support why we removed a kid and are asking for legal action, it's already laid out.
That's not the question.
Appointed
We're talking about
afterwards.
getting them.
Yeah, I was talking about,
As
we're
far
supposed
as
to, you know, our
communication
observations
is
Oh.
we did, and based on.
Okay, I
Why did
gotcha.
the kids this? Well, why? Well, because I saw this, and this. And
Right.
somebody else that's more experienced might say, well, you know, that's really not gonna fly, you know, saying
Right.
because his shoes were a size too big or something, I don't know. You know.
Yeah.
That's just a normal thing that kids go through.
And, you know, what we do is always changing. It's forever changing. With as long as I've done this, I still learn new things. So, you know, when you guys start taking on a case, feel your way around, you know. Don't go guns a-blazing, because we'll shoot you down. But, you know, just kind of feel it out, and, you know, if you have questions, I want you guys to ask us, you know, so you have a better understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, or why we did what we did. You know, you could say, hey, this is what I've done. You might still have this really weird feeling. Is there something else I can do to help back it up? Like I said, when we're talking about a kiddo who looks like he's doing great in a visit, but falls apart afterwards, that we would say, you really need to go do this, you know. You need to observe this on your own, too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for doing what you
Sheila.
do.
for making
Sorry, I'm so scatterbrained today.
Your 7.5 hour day, 10.5 hours.
No, it's been about 12 and a half.
Working half days then.
And if you take a couple minutes and do the evaluation, please.